Um, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome, my brothers, to my English YouTube channel. I'm continuing with grammar, communicative grammar, and today we are going to Unit 4, in which we are going to look at conditional clauses. Conditional clauses. So, conditional clauses in definition terms. Conditional sentences are also known as conditional clauses, or what we call if clauses. If clauses. So they are used to express that the action in the main clause, that's without if, can only take place if a certain condition in the clause with if is fulfilled. So basically we have 4 conditionals, and that is zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, and third conditional. So if I start with the zero conditional, with zero conditional, we use zero conditional on general truth. We use zero conditional on general truth. That is, when we are talking about scientific facts, we use zero conditional. So zero means no conditional. And that's why some grammarians don't even mention zero conditional. They just start from first conditional. But I'm going to inform you that we have zero conditional, which is if plus present simple, then it gives you the main clause, which is present simple. That is, if this thing happens, that thing happens. If this thing happens, that thing happens. So it just means that both the if clause and the main clause are in present tense. Like when you say, if rain falls, grass will get wet. If rain falls, grass will get wet. This is a scientific fact. There's no way that rain will fall and we end up not having grass getting wet. So this is what is all about, the general truth that we know, the general truth that we know. So I'm saying that we are moving forward to get to really things. So after I have finished zero conditional, now we are moving to first conditional. First conditional. The form of first conditional is if plus simple present, then the main clause will have will, that is future, plus the tense in its best form. So for example, if I find her address, if I find her address, I'll send her an invitation. That is, the main clause can also be at the beginning of the sentence. In this case, don't use a comma. So what am I saying? I'm saying that you can start a sentence with the if clause and end with the main clause. And in this case, you separate the two clauses using a comma. But in any case, you start with the main clause and end with the if clause. Don't separate the two clauses using a comma. So for example, I can say, I will send her an invitation if I find her address. In this one, there is no comma separating the two clauses. So main clause and if or clause might be negative, then we can say like this: if I don't see him this afternoon, I will phone him in the evening. If I don't see him this afternoon, I will phone him in the evening. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that in the first conditional, the condition or the if clause is in present tense, and the main clause, what we call the result, is in future tense. When do we use the first conditional? And first of all, I want you to remember that we use first conditional to give a warning. We use a first conditional to give a warning. Why? If I tell you that if you work hard, you will succeed, or if you work hard, you are going to succeed, I'm simply warning you. I'm simply telling you that you have to work hard. And also you'll find that in this first conditional, we can replace will in the main clause with the modals. We can replace will in the main clause with modals. Modals like may, might, can, could, must. And whenever we replace will in the main clause using different types of modals, then the sentence will acquire a new implication, meaning the sentence will have a different meaning. So, if, for example, I say, if you work hard, you may succeed. I'm saying you may. I'm not assuring you that you will succeed. Now I've removed will. I'm using may. Or I say you might succeed. Chances are 50-50. The probability is a half. But when I tell you that if you work hard, you must succeed. Yeah, you must succeed. Then I'm sure with what I'm saying. Or you could succeed. Then I'm somehow, if not somewhat, sure that you will succeed. So let us look at the use. First conditional is used when it is possible and also very likely that the condition will be fulfilled. So conditional sentences type 1 refer to the future. An action in the future will only happen if a certain condition is fulfilled by that time, So we don't know for sure whether the condition actually will be fulfilled or not, but the conditions seems rather realistic. So we think it is likely to happen. For example, if I find her address, I will send her an invitation. Now in this sentence, I want to send an invitation to a friend. I just have to find her address. I'm quite sure, however, that I will find it. Or you can even say, if John has the money, he will buy a Ferrari. So what am I saying? I know John very well, and I know that he earns a lot of money and that he loves Ferraris. So I think it is very likely that sooner or later he will have the money to buy a Ferrari. A Ferrari is an expensive car. Ferrari is an expensive car. Having completed the condition 1, let us move to condition type 2. Here, it is if plus simple past, then the main clause is would plus infinitive of the verb. So when we talk about infinitive, we mean to plus the verb in its base form, meaning in its simple present form. So, what you have to know here is that in this second type conditional, the if clause, that is the condition clause, is in the simple past. Yeah? But the main clause is in present tense. For example, if I found her address, I would send her an invitation. So the main clause can also be at the beginning of the sentence. In this case, don't use a comma. Don't use a comma. I would send her an invitation if I found her address. Now in this sentence, there's no comma. Why? Because I have started this sentence using the main clause and ending with the if clause. So main clause and or if clause might be negative. For example, if I had a lot of money, I wouldn't stay here. Why instead of was? So we're using were instead of was. I'm saying it is common, it's advisable to say if I were than to say if I was. So in if clause type 2, we usually use were even if the pronoun is I, he, she, or it. Meaning, if I were you, I would not do this. If he were you, okay, if he were you, if they were you, and what have you. So how and when do we use this second conditional? Conditional type 2 refer to situations in the present, meaning an action could happen if the present situation were different. I don't really expect the situation to change. However, I just imagine what would have happened if. For example, if I found her address, I would send her an invitation. Yes, I would like to send her an invitation. And okay, fine. I would like to send an invitation to a friend. I have looked everywhere for her address, but I cannot find it. So now I think it is rather unlikely that I will eventually find her address. So let us now move to conditional type 3. The form is this: if plus past perfect, if plus past perfect, and the main clause comes in would, could, might, plus have, plus the verb in its past participle, what we call V3, verb 3, meaning verb in its past participle. So what are we saying here? For example, if I had found her address, I would have sent her an invitation. If I had found her address, I would have sent her an invitation. So the main clause can also be at the beginning of the sentence. In this case, don't use a comma. Example, I would have sent her an invitation if I had found her address. I would have sent her an invitation if I had found her address. Note, main clause and or if clause might be negative. Yes, like I would say, if I hadn't studied, I wouldn't have passed my exams, meaning I passed my exams. So I'm saying, if I hadn't studied hard, I wouldn't have passed my exam. So when and where do we use add conditional clause? Conditional sentence type 3 refer to situations in the past. An action could have happened in the past if a certain condition had been fulfilled. Things were different then, however. We just imagine what would have happened if the situation had been fulfilled. So I'm saying that the condition, the if clause is in the past perfect and the main clause is in the past, is in the past. For example, if I had found her address, I would have sent her an invitation. So Sometime in the past, I wanted to send an invitation to a friend. I didn't find her address, however, so in the end, I didn't send her an invitation. Another example, if John had the money, he would have bought a Ferrari. I knew John very well, and I know that he never had much money, but he loved Ferraris. He would have loved to own a Ferrari, but he never had the money to buy one. So this brings us to the end of conditionals. So in summary, I'm saying this. In summary, I'm saying that we have 4 conditionals. And I'm saying in all the 4 conditionals, you can start a sentence with the if clause and end with the main clause, and you separate the 2 clauses or the 2 short sentences using a comma, But if you start a sentence by or with the main clause and end with the if clause, then you don't separate the 2 sentences using a comma. Now, what I want you to remember on 0 conditional is, number 1, 0 conditional is used on general truth, meaning like scientific facts. Number 2, in 0 conditional, the condition or if clause and the main clause, what we call the result, are both in present tense. Point number 3 that you have to remember on 0 conditional is that we can replace if with when, and the meaning remains the same. So I'm saying in 0 conditional, we can replace if with when, and the meaning of the sentence doesn't change. It remains the same. Now, coming to first conditional, what I want you to remember is point number 1. Point number 1. The if clause is in present tense and the main clause is in future tense. Number 2 that I want you to remember is we use first conditional to give a warning. We use the first conditional to give a warning. Point number 3. I would like you to remember that instead of using will in the main clause, we can instead use modals like may, might, could, should, must. And whenever we use them, they make a different implication, meaning the sentence would have a different meaning. Let me take you to conditional 2. You have to remember, number 1, that the if clause is in the past tense and the main clause is in the present tense. That is what you have to remember. When we come to conditional type 3, I'm saying point number 1 to remember. The if clause is in the past perfect and the main clause is in the past tense. That is what you have to remember. Otherwise, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this lesson and the whole unit, that is conditionals. And as I've said, we have 4 conditionals, or what we call if clause sentences. Otherwise, thank you very much. Masalama ilalgha al-karbi.